The Queen lost her daughters years ago, and a human brought them home. Part 5. The Queen's New Dawn. The crystal spires of Thessia Prime gleamed in the light of 3 suns as the Harmony node approached the capital world, escorted by the full, ceremonial fleet of the Zephyrian Empire. News of the princess's return had spread across the galaxy faster than light itself, carried by quantum communication networks that reached every corner of civilized space. Queen Velnara stood at the great window of her palace, her hands pressed against the crystal surface as she watched the impossible sight approaching her world. The alien vessel was beautiful beyond description, its organic curves flowing like liquid music made solid. But all her attention was focused on the 3 small figures she could see through the transparent sections of the ship's hull. Her daughters, alive. After 3 years of mourning, 3 years of wearing the mourning veil, 3 years of believing she would never see their faces again, they were coming home. Admiral Zexathala stood beside her sister, her own eyes filled with tears of joy and disbelief. The entire court is in chaos, Your Majesty. Half the nobles are demanding that you receive the human with full honors, while the other half insist that no alien should be permitted to set foot in the palace. The Queen's voice was steady despite the emotion in her eyes. And what do you recommend, sister? I recommend that you listen to your daughters, the Admiral replied. They have survived 3 years in a place where our most advanced ships could not last 3 minutes. If they say this human deserves honor, then perhaps we should trust their judgment. Through the communication channels, Princess Lyra's voice reached across the void to her mother. Mama, we are home. Captain Chen and his crew have brought us back to you just as your lullaby promised they would. Queen Velnara closed her eyes and felt tears stream down her face. That voice, so much older and wiser than when she had heard it last, but still unmistakably her eldest daughter. My brave girl, she whispered into the communicator. I have waited for you every day. The landing ceremony was unlike anything in Zephyrian history. The great plaza before the Crystal Palace had been cleared, and thousands of citizens lined the surrounding terraces to witness the return of their lost princesses. The Harmony node settled onto the landing platform with impossible grace, its organic hull rippling as it touched the crystalline surface. Marcus felt the mental link with the node begin to fade as the ship's systems powered down. The ancient vessel had served its purpose, carrying them safely through the void and home to Zephyrian space. But he could sense that it was not truly dormant, merely resting, waiting for the next time it would be needed to dance with the forces that others feared. The airlock opened, and Princess Lyra stepped out first, her bearing regal despite her simple clothes. She had grown during their ordeal, not just in height, but in wisdom and strength. Behind her came Princess Kira, still bubbling with curiosity about everything she saw, and little Princess Zara, who clutched a small flowering plant she had taken from the node as a remembrance. The crowd's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Cheers erupted from thousands of throats as the Zephyrian people saw their beloved princesses alive and well. Many were weeping openly, remembering the dark days when the Empire had mourned their loss. But the cheers turned to confused murmurs as Marcus emerged from the ship behind them. He was clearly alien, clearly human, and his presence alongside the royal family was unprecedented in Zephyrian history. Sarah, Elena, Xander, and Korvek followed him, looking uncomfortable under the scrutiny of so many staring eyes. Queen Velnara descended the palace steps with measured grace, fighting the urge to run to her daughters. Royal protocol demanded dignity, but her heart demanded she hold her children again after so many years of emptiness. The formal reunion took place in the center of the plaza, witnessed by thousands and broadcast across the galaxy. Princess Lyra approached her mother and performed the traditional bow of a royal daughter returning from a long journey. Your Majesty, she said formally, by your leave we have returned to serve the Empire and our people. The Queen's composure finally broke. She swept all 3 of her daughters into her arms, holding them tightly as if she could somehow make up for 3 years of missed embraces in a single moment. The crowd erupted in renewed cheers, but the royal family heard nothing except their own whispered words of love and relief. When they finally separated, Queen Velnara turned her attention to Marcus and his crew. The human captain stood quietly, allowing the family their reunion without intrusion. There was something in his bearing that spoke of deep strength and quiet honor, qualities that the queen had learned to recognize during her decades of rule. "Captain Marcus Chen," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the plaza, "my daughters tell me that you risked your life to save them, and that you have served as their protector and guide. Is this true?" Marcus inclined his head respectfully. "Your Majesty, your daughters saved themselves. I merely provided transportation and perhaps a different way of looking at impossible problems." Princess Kira stepped forward, her young voice bright with indignation. "Mama, he is being modest. Captain Chen interfaced with predecessor technology to save not just us, but the entire empire. He could have died, but he did it anyway because it was the right thing to do." A murmur ran through the crowd at the mention of predecessor technology. Such artifacts were considered holy relics by many Zephyrians, completely beyond the reach of modern science. Queen Velnara studied Marcus with new interest. "Is it true that you successfully interfaced with a harmony node?" "With help from your daughters, Your Majesty," Marcus replied. "Human minds are adaptable, but Zephyrian harmony techniques provided the stability needed to maintain the connection. Neither of our species could have achieved it alone." The queen nodded slowly. Here was a human who gave credit to others, who understood that strength came from cooperation rather than domination. It was a wisdom that many of her own nobles had never learned. "Captain Chen," she said formally, "by the ancient laws of our people, my daughter has claimed the right of champion for you and your crew. This places you under the direct protection of the crown, but it also creates obligations on both sides. Are you prepared to accept these responsibilities?" Marcus felt the weight of history in that moment. He was about to become the first non-Zephyrian ever granted such status, setting a precedent that would echo through the ages. But as he looked at the three princesses who had become like family to him, the choice was easy. "I am honored to accept, Your Majesty." The formal ceremony that followed was brief but profound. Queen Velnara removed her mourning veil for the first time in 3 years, letting the dark fabric fall to the crystal platform. In its place, she donned the golden circlet of joy worn only to celebrate the most precious victories. "Let it be recorded in the archives of the Empire," she declared, "that Captain Marcus Chen and his crew are hereby granted the status of Imperial Champions, with all the rights and honors pertaining thereto. Let it further be recorded that this day marks not just the return of my daughters, but the beginning of a new age of cooperation between our peoples." But Marcus had a different proposal, one that would reshape both their species' futures. "Your Majesty," he said, stepping forward, "the harmony node that brought us here is just one of many scattered across the galaxy. The predecessors built an entire network of these vessels to maintain balance in the dangerous regions of space. With your permission, I would like to propose a joint expedition to find and activate more of them." The Queen's eyes widened as she grasped the implications. "A joint human Zephyrian exploration fleet? Led by your daughters," Marcus added with a smile. "They have more experience with predecessor technology than anyone else alive. They should be the ones to unlock its secrets." Princess Lyra stepped forward, her eyes shining with excitement. "Mama, we could explore regions of space that no one has ever seen. We could learn things about the universe that even the predecessors never discovered." The Queen looked at her eldest daughter and saw not the child who had left 3 years ago, but a young woman ready to lead her people into a new era. The ordeal in the void had changed all her daughters, giving them wisdom and courage beyond their years. "Very well," Queen Velnara said. "Let the construction of the exploration vessel begin immediately. It shall be called the New Harmony, and it will carry both human adaptability and Zephyrian wisdom to the farthest reaches of the galaxy." The celebration that followed lasted for 3 days. The streets of the capital filled with music and laughter, as the Zephyrian people celebrated not just the return of their princesses, but the dawn of a new age. Humans and Zephyrians worked together to design the new ship, combining their different approaches to create something neither species could have built alone. Marcus stood on the palace balcony on the final night of the celebration, watching the aurora-like displays that danced across the sky of Thessia Prime. Princess Zara found him there, still clutching the small plant she had taken from the Harmony node. "Captain Marcus," she said in her sweet voice, "will you teach me more human songs for our journey? I want to learn lullabies from your world, too." Marcus smiled and knelt down to her level. "Of course, little princess. And the queen lost her daughters years ago, and a human brought them. Home, Part 1, The Morning Throne." The crystal spires of Thessia Prime caught the light of 3 suns as Queen Velnara walked slowly through the empty corridors of her palace. Her footsteps echoed against the walls that once rang with laughter and the sound of running feet. The mourning veil draped across her shoulders felt heavier with each passing day, its dark fabric a constant reminder of what she had lost. 3 cycles had passed since the shuttle Silver Dawn had vanished into the void reaches. 3 cycles since her daughters had left on what should have been a simple diplomatic mission to the outer colonies. Princess Lyra, barely 14, but already showing the wisdom of her bloodline. Princess Kira, 12 years old with a laugh that could brighten the darkest room. Little Princess Zara, only 9, who collected strange rocks from every world they visited and insisted on showing them to everyone she met. The queen paused at the great window overlooking the capital city. Below, millions of Zephyrians went about their daily lives, their elongated forms moving gracefully through the floating gardens and crystal walkways. They all wore small mourning pins in honor of their lost princesses, but the queen knew that time would fade their grief. Only, she would carry this weight forever. Admiral Zexthala, her sister and closest advisor, approached with careful steps. The admiral's usually proud bearing seemed subdued as she joined the queen at the window. They stood in silence for long moments before the admiral spoke. "The search fleets have returned from their final sweep of the void reaches," she said quietly. "They found debris from 17 different ships, but nothing from the Silver Dawn. The gravitational storms have grown worse. Even our most advanced vessels cannot penetrate deeper than the outer boundary." Queen Velnara nodded without turning from the window. She had known this day would come. The void reaches were a graveyard of ships and dreams, a region of space where the fabric of reality itself seemed twisted and broken. No vessel that entered the deep void had ever returned. "Declare the official mourning period complete," the queen said finally. "The people need to move forward, even if I cannot." The admiral hesitated. "Your Majesty, perhaps it is time for you to consider removing the mourning veil as well. The Empire needs its queen to—" "The Empire has its queen," Velnara interrupted, her voice carrying the authority that had commanded 12 star systems for over 2 decades. "But a mother keeps her vigil until the stars themselves grow cold." Far across the galaxy, in a sector that most civilized species avoided, a battered human salvage ship called the Persistence drifted through a field of broken metal and failed dreams. The ship looked like it had been built from spare parts and determination, which was not far from the truth. Its hull bore the scars of 100 dangerous salvage operations, and its crew was just as weathered. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the bridge, studying the debris field through the main view screen. At 35, Marcus had the kind of face that spoke of hard choices and harder luck, but his eyes still held the spark of someone who refused to give up. His dark hair was streaked with premature gray, and a scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, a souvenir from a salvage operation that had gone very wrong. "Sensors are picking up some high-grade alloys in that wreckage cluster," reported Sarah Kim, the ship's engineer and Marcus's oldest friend. She was hunched over her console, her skilled fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed the scattered remains of what had once been a luxury yacht. "Could be worth enough to keep us flying for another month." Marcus nodded, but his attention was divided. Something was bothering him about this debris field, though he could not quite put his finger on what. He had been salvaging in the outer sectors for over 10 years, and his instincts had kept him alive longer than most. "Xander, take us in closer," he ordered. The ship's pilot, a cheerful human with cybernetic implants covering half his skull, adjusted their approach vector. The Persistence carried a crew of 6, all of them refugees from civilized space in one way or another. There was Sarah, who had been blacklisted from the engineering corps for asking too many questions about weapon systems. Xander had been a military pilot until he lost his squadron to friendly fire and decided he was done taking orders. The others were similar stories of good people caught in bad situations, finding family among the outcasts and scavengers who worked the dangerous edges of known space. As they moved through the debris field, Marcus felt that nagging sensation grow stronger. He had learned to trust his instincts even when they led him into trouble, especially when they led him into trouble. "Captain," called out Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's medic and communications specialist. She was frowning at her console, adjusting settings with growing confusion. "I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors. It's very faint, but it looks like a distress beacon." Marcus moved to look over her shoulder. The signal was indeed weak, barely registering above background radiation. But it was there, pulsing in a steady rhythm that seemed somehow familiar. "Where is it coming from?" he asked. Elena's frown deepened. "That's the problem, Captain. The signal is originating from deep within the void reaches." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Every spacer knew about the void reaches. It was a region of space where the normal laws of physics seemed to break, down where gravitational storms could tear a ship apart in seconds and where navigation was impossible. The area was marked on every star chart with warnings in dozens of languages, all saying the same thing: stay away. "That's impossible," said Korvek, the ship's Altarian security chief. His forearms crossed in a gesture of dismissal. "No ship can survive in the deep void. The signal must be a reflection or an echo." Marcus studied the readout more carefully. There was something about the pattern of the beacon that tugged at his memory. He had heard something like it before. But where? The rhythm was not random, and it was not following any standard distress protocol he recognized. "Elena, can you clean up that signal? I want to hear what we're dealing with." The medic worked at her console for several minutes, applying filters and boosting the gain. Slowly the static cleared, and a sound filled the bridge that made Marcus's blood run cold. It was not a standard distress call. It was singing. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, rising and falling in patterns that spoke of hope and loneliness and desperate courage. But more than that, Marcus recognized it as a lullaby, sung in the ancient ceremonial language of the Zephyrian Empire. He had heard it years ago when he had done some work for Zephyrian merchants, and they had explained that it was a song mothers sang to their children to keep them safe during long journeys. "Korvek is right," Sarah said quietly. "No one could be alive in there. It has to be an automated beacon, maybe from an old wreck." But Marcus was already moving toward the pilot station. That song was not a recording. There were subtle variations in the melody, small imperfections that spoke of a living voice growing tired but refusing to give up. Someone was alive in the void reaches, and they were calling for help in the only way they could. "Xander, plot a course for the void reaches," Marcus ordered. The bridge erupted in protests. Sarah grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. "Marcus, you cannot be serious. That place is a death trap. Our ship would not last 5 minutes in there." "The captain is correct," Korvek agreed, his voice unusually emotional. "The void reaches have claimed thousands of ships. Even the most advanced vessels of the core worlds avoid that region." Marcus looked around at his crew, these people who had followed him through impossible situations and trusted his judgment, even when it seemed insane. They were right to be afraid. The void reaches were a graveyard, and taking the Persistence in there was probably suicide. But that song continued to play over the communication system, and with each note, Marcus became more certain that someone was out there, alone and afraid and hoping against hope that someone would hear their call. "I know it's dangerous," he said finally. "But someone is alive out there. They've been singing that lullaby for who knows how long, waiting for someone to find them. I cannot just leave them there." Elena looked up from her console, her expression troubled. "Captain, I've been analyzing the signal pattern. If I'm reading this correctly, the beacon has been broadcasting for over 3 years. 3 years. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. 3 years of singing the same lullaby, over and over, hoping someone would hear. 3 years of holding on to hope in a place where hope should have died long ago. He made his decision. Elena, send a message on all frequencies, tell them we're coming. Xander, take us into the void. The queen lost her daughters years ago, and a human brought them. Home. Part 2. The Impossible Refuge. The Persistence shuddered as it crossed the threshold into the void reaches. Marcus gripped the command chair as the ship's lights flickered, and the familiar hum of the engines took on an unsteady rhythm. Outside the viewscreen, space itself seemed wrong. Stars bent and twisted in impossible patterns, and streams of energy flowed like rivers through the darkness. Hull integrity holding, but the gravitational shears are stronger than expected, Sarah reported from her engineering station. Her voice was tight with concentration as she worked to keep their systems stable. I'm reading fluctuations in our power core. Whatever is causing these distortions is affecting our antimatter containment. Xander fought with the controls as the ship bucked and rolled. Navigation is completely useless in here, Captain. The gravitational fields are shifting too fast for our computers to track. I'm flying blind. Marcus nodded grimly. He had expected this. The void reaches were not just dangerous because of the gravitational storms. The very nature of space-time was unstable here, making conventional navigation impossible, but the beacon was still broadcasting, and Marcus had learned to trust something that most other species seem to lack: human intuition. Cut the navigation computers, he ordered. Xander, follow the signal. Use your instincts, not the instruments. The pilot looked at him with wide eyes. Captain, that's insane. No one flies through gravitational storms by instinct. No one else does, Marcus replied calmly. But humans have been navigating by feel for thousands of years before we had computers. Trust yourself. Elena looked up from her communications station with growing excitement. The signal is getting stronger, Captain. And I'm picking up something else. There are energy readings ahead, something that doesn't match the background radiation of the void. As they pushed deeper into the chaotic region, the Persistence was battered by forces that should have torn it apart. But somehow, Marcus's faith in human adaptability proved correct. Xander flew not by calculations but by feeling, sensing the ebb and flow of the gravitational currents like an ancient sailor reading the wind. When the computers said they should go left, his instincts told him to go right, and each time his instincts proved correct. After what felt like hours but was, probably only minutes, something appeared on their view screen that made the entire crew fall silent. Through the swirling chaos of the void, a structure hung impossibly steady in space. It was enormous, easily the size of a small city, and it glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to push back the darkness around it. "What is that thing?" whispered Dr. Vasquez. Marcus stared at the structure in amazement. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The design was flowing and organic, as if it had grown rather than been built. Curved spires reached out in all directions, connected by bridges that seemed to pulse with living energy. Most incredible of all, it appeared to be completely unaffected by the gravitational storms that raged around it. "It's a space station," Korvac said slowly. "But the design doesn't match any known species. This is technology I have never encountered before." Sarah was studying her readings with growing wonder. "Captain, this is impossible. According to my instruments, that station is not just surviving the void. It's somehow harmonizing with it. The gravitational fields around the structure are actually stabilized." As they approached the mysterious station, Marcus could see that it was old. Very old. The hull showed signs of incredible age, but it was not the decay of abandonment. This was the weathering of something that had stood against time itself and refused to fall. Docking ports were clearly visible along the lower sections, and one of them was large enough for the Persistence. "Elena, are you still receiving that beacon?" "Yes, Captain, it's coming from inside the station, and the signal is much clearer now. I can make out multiple voices singing in harmony." multiple voices. Marcus felt his heart race. If there were survivors on that station, they had been singing that lullaby for 3 years, taking turns to keep the beacon active. The dedication and hope required for such an act was almost beyond comprehension. The docking procedure was surprisingly smooth. The ancient station's systems seemed to recognize their approach and guided them to a secure berth. As the Persistence settled into the docking clamps, Marcus could feel a strange sense of peace wash over him. For the first time since entering the void reaches, the ship was completely steady. Atmosphere on the other side of the airlock, Elena reported. It's breathable for both humans and Zephyrians. Temperature is comfortable, but Captain, I'm reading life signs, 3 small ones, and 1 that's very weak. Marcus assembled a small team for the boarding. Sarah would stay with the ship to monitor their systems while he took Elena, Korvek, and Xander to investigate. As they passed through the airlock, Marcus was struck by the quality of air inside the station. It smelled of growing things, of flowers and fresh rain, completely unlike the recycled atmosphere of most space stations. The corridor they entered was breathtaking. The walls curved gracefully overhead, and soft bioluminescent panels provided gentle lighting that seemed to respond to their presence. But what truly caught their attention were the sounds echoing through the passages. Singing. 3 young voices raised in perfect harmony, performing the same lullaby they had been following. The sound, the team made their way deeper into the station. The architecture was like nothing Marcus had ever seen. Instead of rigid corridors and angular chambers, everything flowed together in organic curves. Plants grew from alcoves in the walls, their leaves glowing softly with their own inner light. Water trickled through channels carved into the floor, creating a peaceful melody that complemented the distant singing. "This place is alive," Elena whispered. "I mean really alive. The bio readings I'm getting suggest that the entire station is some kind of living organism." They found them in a large chamber near the heart of the station. 3 young Zephyrians sat in a circle around a pool of glowing water, their voices raised in the haunting melody that had drawn the Persistence across the galaxy. They were thin but clearly healthy, their large eyes bright with intelligence and determination. The eldest looked to be about 14, the youngest perhaps 9 years old. Near the pool lay an adult Zephyrian, his breathing shallow and labored. Even from a distance, Marcus could see that he was dying. The adult's eyes opened as the rescue team approached, and he struggled to sit up. "Impossible," he whispered in accented standard. "No ship can survive the void. You must be another dream." The 3 young Zephyrians had stopped singing and were staring at the newcomers with a mixture of hope and fear. The eldest stepped forward, her bearing proud despite her obvious exhaustion. "I am Princess Lyra of the Zephyrian Empire," she said formally. "These are my sisters, Princess Kira and Princess Zara. We have been waiting for rescue for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Marcus felt the pieces clicking together in his mind. These were Queen Velnara's lost daughters, the princesses who had vanished in the void reaches. Somehow, impossibly, they had survived in this ancient station while their guardians slowly died and their mother mourned them as lost. The dying Zephyrian, who Marcus now realized must be Captain Thextar of the Silver Dawn, gestured weakly toward the walls around them. "This place," he whispered. "It is a harmony node, built by those who came before, the predecessors. They learned to work with the void instead of fighting it." Princess Kira, the middle child, moved closer to Marcus. "The station kept us alive, but it was not built for our people. Captain Thextar has been teaching us how to maintain the bioharmonic systems, but they are failing. He says we do not have the right kind of mind patterns. We kept singing the beacon song because Mama taught it to us," added little Princess Zara, her voice small but determined. "She said it would always bring us home." Marcus looked around the chamber with new understanding. The station was indeed alive, an incredible fusion of biology and technology that worked by harmonizing with natural forces rather than dominating them. But it was designed for minds very different from Zephyrian consciousness, and it was slowly dying as it tried to adapt to its current occupants. Captain Thexitar gripped Marcus's arm with surprising strength. "You must understand," he gasped. "This node is the only thing stabilizing this section of the void. If it fails completely, the gravitational cascade will destroy half the Zephyrian Empire. The princesses know this. They have chosen to stay and die rather than let their people suffer." Princess Lyra nodded solemnly. "We are prepared to make the sacrifice as our bloodline demands. But if you could carry word to our mother that we died with honor, we would be grateful." Marcus stared at the 3 brave children who had spent 3 years maintaining an ancient alien station, keeping hope alive through song while prepared to sacrifice their lives for their people. Around him, the Harmony node pulsed with failing energy, its bioluminescent walls growing dimmer as its systems struggled to compensate for minds they were never designed to interface with. But Marcus was human, and humans had a talent for finding solutions where others saw only impossible choices. He moved closer to one of the glowing wall panels, placing his hand against its warm surface. The moment his pal, the Queen, lost her daughters years ago, and a human brought them home. Part 3. The Harmony Solution. Marcus stood in the heart of the ancient Harmony node, his hand still pressed against the glowing wall panel. The alien technology pulsed beneath his palm, sending strange sensations up his arm that felt like music made physical. Around him, the 3 princesses watched with growing hope, while Captain Thexitar struggled to remain conscious on his makeshift bed. Sarah's voice crackled through, his communicator from the Persistence. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy fluctuations throughout the station. Whatever you're doing over there, it's affecting every system on this ancient bucket of bolts." "The station is trying to interface with him," Princess Lyra observed, her voice filled with wonder. "Look at the bioluminescent patterns. They're matching his heartbeat." Indeed, the soft blue glow that emanated from the walls had begun to pulse in rhythm with Marcus's pulse. More than that, he could feel something vast and ancient stirring in the depths of the node, like a sleeping giant slowly awakening after millennia of dreams. Elena arrived with her medical scanner, taking readings of Marcus's vital signs. "Your neural activity is off the charts, Captain. Whatever this station is doing to you, it's activating parts of your brain that normally remain dormant." Marcus closed his eyes and tried to understand what was happening to him. Images flashed through his mind, visions of the predecessors who had built this place eons ago. They had been explorers like himself, wanderers who chose to work with the dangerous forces of the universe rather than hide from them. But unlike most species, they had not tried to conquer or control these forces. Instead, they had learned to dance with them. "Captain Thexitar," Marcus said without opening his eyes, "tell me about the Harmony nodes. How are they supposed to work?" The dying Zephyrian captain coughed weakly before answering. "The predecessors built them to be mobile," he whispered. "They were not just stations but ships, traveling through the galaxy to maintain balance in regions where space itself was unstable. But controlling them required a complete neural integration. The pilot had to become one with the node, losing their individual consciousness forever." Princess Kira stepped closer, her young face troubled. "That's why we couldn't make it work properly. Zephyrian minds are too rigid, too focused on maintaining our individual identity. We could interface enough to keep basic systems running, but not enough to truly control the node." "But human minds are different," Princess Zara added, her voice bright with sudden understanding. "Humans adapt. They change. They become something new when they need to." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The little princess was right. Human neural plasticity was legendary among the galactic community. It was why humans could learn any language, adapt to any environment, work with any species. But it also meant that prolonged contact with alien technology could fundamentally alter human consciousness. "There has to be another way," he said, pulling his hand back from the wall panel. The lights immediately dimmed, and he felt a sense of loss that surprised him with its intensity. "I won't sacrifice my humanity to save anyone, not even 3 princesses." Sarah's voice came through the communicator again, this time with urgency. "Captain, you need to get back here. I'm detecting massive gravitational instabilities building throughout the void. If this station fails completely, the cascade effect will reach beyond the void reaches. My calculations show it could destroy dozens of star systems. The chamber fell silent except for the labored breathing of Captain Thextar. Marcus looked at the three princesses, these brave children who had been prepared to die to prevent such a catastrophe. They were still prepared to make that sacrifice, he could see it in their eyes. But there had to be another solution. What if the integration doesn't have to be complete? He asked suddenly. What if someone could partially interface with the node, maintain enough individuality to remain human but establish enough connection to control the systems? Princess Lyra shook her head sadly. The predecessors tried that approach. Captain Thextar showed us the historical records stored in the node's memory banks. Partial integration always failed. The pilot would either lose themselves completely or lose control of the node. But those were not human pilots, Marcus pointed out. You said it yourself, Zephyrian minds are too rigid. What about a species that thrives on adaptation and change? Elena looked up from her readings with growing excitement. Captain, your brain patterns are unlike anything I've seen. When you touched the station, your neural pathways began forming new connections at an incredible rate. It's almost as if your mind was rewiring itself to accommodate the alien interface. Marcus felt hope stirring in his chest. Maybe there was a way to save everyone after all. But as he reached toward the wall panel again, Princess Lyra grabbed his wrist. Wait, she said urgently. If you're going to try this, you should not do it alone. Zephyrian bioharmonic techniques are designed to help stabilize neural patterns during stress. We might be able to help you maintain your human consciousness while interfacing with the node. Princess Kira nodded enthusiastically. We've been practicing harmony techniques for 3 years. We know how to synchronize our mental patterns with others. If we work together, we might be able to create a stable interface. The idea was audacious. Instead of one person sacrificing themselves to save everyone else, they would all work together to achieve something none of them could accomplish alone. It was a very human solution to an impossible problem. Marcus looked around at the failing station, feeling the weight of millions of lives hanging in the balance. The gravitational instabilities were growing stronger by the minute. Soon, the choice would be taken away from them entirely. All right, he said finally. Let's try something that's never been done before. Elena, monitor our vital signs. If any of us start to lose ourselves in the interface, you pull us out immediately. The three princesses arranged themselves around Marcus in a triangle, their hands placed on his shoulders. Captain Thextar, despite his weakness, managed to prop himself up to observe the attempt. Remember, he wheezed, the node responds to harmony, not force. Do not try to control it, instead convince it to dance with you. Marcus placed both hands against the central interface panel and immediately felt the alien consciousness surge into his mind. It was overwhelming at first, like trying to drink from a waterfall of pure thought. But then he felt the princess's presence beside him, their Zephyrian harmony techniques creating a stabilizing influence that kept his human consciousness anchored. Through the node's senses, Marcus could perceive the entire void reaches in a way no organic mind was meant to comprehend. He could see the gravitational currents flowing like rivers of twisted space-time, could feel the delicate balance that kept this region of chaos from expanding outward to consume inhabited systems. Princess Lyra's voice came to him not through his ears, but directly into his thoughts. The node wants to move, Captain Chen. It has been trapped here for so long that it has almost forgotten its original purpose. It's not a station, Princess Kira added, her mental voice filled with wonder. It's a ship. It was always meant to be a ship. Through his enhanced perception, Marcus could see what the princesses meant. The harmony node was indeed a vessel, but one designed to sail the dangerous currents of unstable space rather than the calm void between stars. The predecessors had built it to go where other ships could not, to repair the fabric of reality itself in places where it had been torn or damaged. The transformation began slowly. Ancient systems that had lain dormant for millennia started coming online. The organic hull began to reshape itself, growing new structures that would allow it to navigate the gravitational storms of the void. Most amazingly of all, Marcus felt his consciousness expanding, but not disappearing. The human adaptability that had brought him this far was allowing him to interface with the alien technology while remaining fundamentally himself. Princess Zara's delighted mental laughter filled the shared consciousness. It's working. The node remembers how to fly. But even as systems came online and the station began its transformation into a proper starship, Marcus could feel the strain on all of them. The partial integration was stable for now, but it required constant effort to maintain the balance between human adaptability and Zephyrian harmony. If any of them weakened or lost focus, the whole delicate structure could collapse. Sarah's voice broke through the interface, transmitted directly into his enhanced awareness. "Captain, the gravitational fields around the station are stabilizing, but I'm reading massive energy buildups throughout the void. You need to get out of there now, or you'll be caught in the cascade when the region destabilizes." Through the node sensors, Marcus could see the truth of her warning. The ancient balance that had kept this section of the void stable was finally breaking down. They had perhaps minutes before the gravitational storms would tear apart anything caught in the region, harmony node or not. But the node was ready now. Marcus could feel its eagerness to return to the purpose for which it had been created. With the combined will of human determination and Zephyrian harmony guiding it, the ancient ship began to move through the chaotic currents of the void with a grace that defied physics. H. The Queen lost her daughters years ago, and a human brought them home. Part 4. The impossible return. The harmony node emerged from the void reaches like a dream made manifest, its organic hull gleaming with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythm with the heartbeats of its occupants. Marcus felt the alien ship respond to his thoughts as naturally as breathing, while the three princesses maintained the delicate harmony that kept his human consciousness stable within the vast network of the node's awareness. Through the ship's enhanced sensors, he could see the Zephyrian border patrol vessels in the distance, their sleek forms patrolling the edge of Empire space. The moment the node appeared on their screens, alarms began blaring across the fleet. Sarah's voice came through the communication system from the Persistence, which was now docked securely within the node's expanded structure. "Captain, we're being scanned by at least 12 Zephyrian warships. They're powering up weapons and moving to intercept." Marcus felt Princess Lyra's concern flowing through their shared mental link. She could see what he was seeing through the node's perception, could feel the fear and suspicion radiating from the approaching fleet. These were her people, but they had no way of knowing that their lost princesses were aboard this impossible alien vessel. "They think we are invaders," Princess Kira observed, her young voice troubled. "The node's technology is completely unknown to them. They will assume the worst." Through the ship's communication array, Marcus could hear the military chatter between the patrol vessels. Admiral Zexthala's voice cut through the noise with sharp authority. "Unidentified vessel, you have emerged from a prohibited zone using technology that does not match any known species. Identify yourself immediately, or be fired upon." Marcus tried to respond through the node's communication system, but the alien technology was still adjusting to human speech patterns. Instead of his words, what emerged was a harmonic tone that sounded more like music than language. The Zephyrian fleet responded predictably. Warning shots streaked past the node, their energy weapons lighting up space with deadly beauty. More ships were arriving by the minute, called in by the Border Patrol's emergency signals. Within moments, the node would be surrounded by the full might of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. "Let me talk to them," Princess Lyra said urgently through their mental link. "I can use the node's systems to broadcast on Zephyrian frequencies." But even as she tried to establish communication, Marcus could see that it was too late. The fleet commander was Admiral Kethvar, a hardened military officer known for his strict adherence to protocol and his distrust of alien species. Through the node's enhanced perception, Marcus could feel the Admiral's determination to destroy what he saw as a threat to the Empire. All vessels form attack formation Beta 7, Admiral Kethavar commanded. Target the alien ship's power core. We will not allow unknown technology to penetrate Imperial space. The situation was spiraling out of control. Marcus realized that any attempt to flee would only confirm their suspicions, while staying would mean facing the combined firepower of a dozen Zephyrian warships. The node was powerful, but he had no desire to harm the very people they were trying to save. Then Princess Zara, the youngest of the three sisters, had an idea that was so simple it was brilliant. The return song, she whispered through their shared consciousness. Every Zephyrian knows the return song. If we sing it through the node's communication array, they will have to listen. The return song was sacred to Zephyrian culture, sung by travelers who had completed long journeys and were coming home. It was more than music. It was a declaration of identity, of belonging, of the unbreakable bonds that tied the Zephyrian people together across the vastness of space. But singing it would require all three princesses to reveal themselves, and there was no guarantee that the fleet would believe the impossible truth of their survival. Marcus felt their resolve through the mental link, felt their willingness to risk everything for the chance to prevent bloodshed between their people and the humans who had saved them. It was a courage that put his own bravery to shame. Do it, he told them. I'll use the node systems to amplify your voices across all Zephyrian frequencies. The three princesses joined hands in the chamber where they had waited for 3 long years, their voices rising in perfect harmony. But this time they were not singing a lullaby of hope and longing. They were singing the ancient melody that announced the return of the lost, the song that proclaimed they were home. The effect on the Zephyrian fleet was immediate and dramatic. Weapons powered down as communications officers scrambled to verify what their ears were telling them. The return song was being sung in the pure, untrained voices of children, but the harmonics were perfect, the pronunciation flawless. More than that, there were subtle variations in the melody that only members of the royal family would know. Admiral Kethavar's voice crackled across the fleet channels, filled with disbelief. Communications, run a voice analysis on that transmission. Compare it to the royal archives. Marcus felt the tension in the fleet as they waited for confirmation. Through the node's sensors, he could see individual crew members on the Zephyrian ships, their faces filled with wonder and hope. Many of them were wiping away tears as the return song continued, its ancient melody touching something deep in the Zephyrian soul. The results came back within minutes. Admiral, the communications officer reported, his voice shaking. Voice. Analysis confirms identity match for Princess Lyra, Princess Kira, and Princess Zara. Sir, it's really them. The lost princesses are alive. The silence that followed was profound. Across the fleet, hardened military officers struggled to process what seemed impossible. The princesses had been lost for 3 years in a region of space that no ship could survive. Their return aboard an alien vessel should have been cause for suspicion, not celebration. But as the return song reached its conclusion, something remarkable happened. One by one, the voices of the fleet began to join in. First the communications officers, then the bridge crews, then entire ships full of Zephyrians raised their voices in harmony with their lost princesses. The ancient melody swelled across space, carried by dozens of ships and thousands of voices, all welcoming their royal daughters home. Admiral Kethavar was the last to join the song, his gruff voice breaking as he added his harmony to the chorus. When the music finally faded, he spoke into the silence that followed. Princess Lyra, Princess Kira, Princess Zara, he said formally. By the authority vested in me by Her Majesty Queen Velnara, I welcome you home to the Zephyrian Empire. The entire galaxy has mourned your loss. Your mother has worn the mourning veil for 3 years, refusing to believe you were truly gone. Princess Lyra's voice came through the node's communication system, clear and strong. Admiral Kethavar, we live because of the courage and sacrifice of a human captain named Marcus Chen. He and his crew risked their lives to rescue us from the void reaches, and he has served as our protector and guide. By the ancient laws of our people, I claim the right of champion for Captain Chen and all those who served with him. The right of champion was an ancient Zephyrian law that had not been invoked in over a century. It granted protected status to anyone who had saved the life of a royal family member, placing them under the direct protection of the crown. But it had never been extended to an alien, and the legal implications were staggering. Admiral Kethvar's hesitation was palpable. Princess, the right of champion has never been granted to a non-Zephyrian. There is no precedent for such an action. Then we will create precedent, Princess Lyra replied with the authority of someone born to rule. Captain Chen did not just save our lives, Admiral. He saved our empire. The void reaches were collapsing, and only his willingness to interface with ancient predecessor technology prevented a gravitational cascade that would have destroyed dozens of star systems. Through the node's sensors, Marcus could feel the disbelief and wonder flowing through the fleet. The idea that a human could interface with predecessor technology was almost beyond comprehension. Such artifacts were considered the most advanced relics in the galaxy, completely beyond the understanding of modern science. But as if to prove the princess's words, the node itself began to demonstrate its capabilities. The organic hull shimmered and flowed, revealing internal structures that defied conventional physics. Energy patterns danced across its surface in displays of beauty and power that left the Zephyrian fleet in awe. Impossible, Admiral Kethvar breathed. No known species has ever successfully interfaced with predecessor technology. Humans are not like other species, Princess Kira added, her young voice filled with admiration. They adapt. They find ways to make the impossible possible. Captain Chen saved us all by learning to dance with forces that we could only fear. The tension in the fleet was shifting. Fear was giving way to wonder, suspicion to curiosity. Marcus could sense individual Zephyrians beginning to see him not as a threat, but as something unprecedented, an alien who had achieved what their own advanced civilization could not. But not everyone in the fleet was convinced. Captain Velthar of the warship Pride of Thessia voiced the concerns that many officers were feeling. Admiral, regardless of what the princesses claim, we cannot simply allow an